I'm Lauren Morse, 30 years old living in Omaha, Nebraska, where I've built a life far from my family's judgmental eyes. Last month, I flew back to Macon, Georgia for my parents' 30th wedding anniversary party. Picture this, a packed banquet hall, relatives and friends clinking glasses toasting to love and legacy. Then my dad stands up, his voice booming over the chatter. Our son, he says, beaming with pride, is successful and responsible. Unlike you, Lauren, he doesn't need handouts to get by. The room erupts in laughter. My mom chimes in smirking, "Yeah." Lauren's still figuring things out, probably begging for cash. The whole crowd laughs harder, their eyes cutting into me like knives. I stood there, heart pounding, gripping my glass so tight it nearly shattered. They thought they knew me. They thought they knew him. But they had no idea what was coming. I'd been waiting for this moment not for revenge, but for truth. Less than 5 minutes later, the laughter stopped, and the room fell silent when I dropped the bomb about my income and his mountain of debt. If you've ever been misjudged by your own family, share your story in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Growing up in suburban Macon, Georgia, my family looked like the perfect middle-class picture. Our two-story house on a quiet cul-de-sac had a neatly trimmed lawn, a basketball hoop in the driveway, and a fridge always stocked with casseroles. My dad, a retired retail manager, ran the household like a store. Everything had to be in order, especially us kids. My mom, who used to be an accountant before staying home, kept the books balanced and the family photo albums polished. But behind the white picket fence, there was a clear favorite, my older brother, Evan. From the time I could tie my shoes, Evan was the star. His report cards plastered with A's hung on the living room wall next to his soccer trophies. "Look at your brother," my dad would say, pointing at the display like it was a museum exhibit. "He's going places." Evan soaked it up, strutting around with a grin, always ready to remind me how he aced his math tests or scored the winning goal. Meanwhile, my knack for numbers, spotting patterns, digging into data got me nothing but eye rolls. "That's a hobby, Lauren, not a career," my mom would sigh, tossing my sketches of charts into the trash. My grades were solid, but they never made it to the wall. My art projects, my coding experiments, none of it mattered. To them, I was chasing daydreams. By the time I was picking colleges at 18, Evan was already at 21, studying business at Georgia State, set to conquer the real estate world. My parents threw him a send-off party, inviting half the neighborhood to toast his future. "He's got a plan," my dad bragged, clinking his beer with neighbors. I wanted to study data analytics, but when I brought it up, my mom laughed. "What's that even mean? You'll end up unemployed." My dad was blunter: "Stick to something practical like your brother." I sat at the kitchen table staring at my rejection letter from a fancy tech school I couldn't afford, feeling like a guest in my own home. Evan, meanwhile, got a new laptop, a car, and endless praise for his ambition. It wasn't just the praise that stung. It was the little things: how my parents would drop everything to watch Evan's games, but forget my science fair. How they'd grill me about my part-time job at the mall, but never asked Evan about his late-night calls with shady business buddies. I'd overhear them whispering about me: "Lauren's too stubborn. She doesn't get how the world works." But Evan? He could do no wrong. His real estate dreams were bold. Mine were unrealistic. I started keeping my achievements to myself: a math competition win, a coding bootcamp scholarship, because sharing them felt like shouting into a void. The worst came during family dinners. Evan would talk up his latest internship, and my parents would hang on every word, nodding like he was giving a TED Talk. I'd try to chime in, maybe about a data project I was proud of, and my dad would cut me off. "Let's hear about something that matters," he'd say, turning back to Evan. My mom would pat my hand, her smile tight like she pitied me for trying. I'd sit there pushing peas around my plate, my stomach twisting with resentment. It wasn't just that they favored Evan. It was that they didn't see me at all. Looking back, I can pinpoint when the rift started to feel permanent. One night, I overheard my parents in the den talking about college funds. "We'll cover Evan's tuition," my dad said. "He's got potential." My mom agreed Lauren will figure it out. She's independent. Independent. That word burned. They didn't mean it as a compliment, they meant I was on my own. I was 18 staring down a future they didn't believe in while Evan got a free ride. That moment cemented it. I had to prove them wrong, not for their approval, but for myself. The summer before college, I faced my first major clash with my family. I sat at our kitchen table in Macon, Georgia, clutching my acceptance letter to a local university's data analytics program. I'd spent months researching drawn to how numbers could tell stories, patterns that predicted trends, solutions that saved businesses. This is my future, I told my parents, my voice steady but hopeful. My dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. Data what? That's not a real job, Lauren. You'll be broke. My mom, stirring her coffee, chimed in. Why can't you pick something solid like your brother's business degree? Evan sprawled on the couch, smirked. Yeah, stick to the real world, sis. Their words hit like a slap, but I wasn't backing down. With no support from home, I forged my own path. I took a part-time job at a Macon bookstore shelving novels and crunching sales data for extra shifts. My parents didn't notice the late nights I spent studying balancing spreadsheets with textbooks. I enrolled at the University of North Georgia, a small campus I could afford without their help. My dad called it a waste of time, but I graduated debt-free thanks to scholarships and grit. At 22, I packed my bags and moved to Omaha, Nebraska, a city buzzing with startups perfect for a data analyst like me. I landed a gig at a marketing firm turning raw numbers into campaigns that drove millions in revenue. By 25, I was leading projects, my salary climbing to six figures. No loans, no handouts, just my own hustle. Meanwhile, Evan was basking in my parents' praise. His real estate ventures in Atlanta were the talk of every family call. Your brother closed another deal, my mom would gush over the phone, never asking about my work. My dad sent me articles about Evan's promising projects, as if I needed a reminder of his supposed success. But I started noticing cracks. During a rare visit home, I saw Evan pull up in a sleek BMW, its chrome glinting under the Georgia sun. New ride, he bragged, tossing the keys. I raised an eyebrow. How'd you afford that? He shrugged, dodging the question. Later, I overheard him on the phone, his voice tense, arguing about missed payments. My parents didn't seem to notice or didn't want to. I kept my head down, building my life in Omaha. My apartment, a cozy loft downtown, was my sanctuary. No trophies on the walls, just my own quiet pride. I earned a promotion to senior analyst, leading a team that shaped national ad campaigns. Clients praised my work. One even flew me to Chicago for a conference, calling my insights game-changing. I sent my parents an email about it, hoping for a shred of recognition. My mom's reply was a single line. That's nice, but have you talked to your brother lately? My dad didn't bother responding. Their silence stung, but it fueled me. I wasn't proving myself to them anymore. I was doing it for me. Evan's life, though, was starting to unravel. On a call with my mom, she let slip that Evan had asked for a small loan to cover some business costs. He's just expanding, she said, brushing it off. But I'd seen his social media, lavish dinners, designer suits, a lifestyle that screamed overreach. I started digging, curious about his so-called empire. A quick search pulled up public records. One of Evan's real estate deals had collapsed, leaving investors furious. Whispers of unpaid contractors floated around. I didn't say anything, not yet. I just filed it away, a puzzle piece I'd use later. By my late 20s, I'd built a life I was proud of. My bank account was solid, my career was soaring, and I had no debt tying me down. But every call home was the same, my parents gushing about Evan's latest pitch, his next big project. They never asked about my work, my wins. It was like I was invisible, my success a footnote they refused to read. Still, I held on to a stubborn hope that one day they'd see me. That hope carried me through right up until the moment I got the invitation to their 30th anniversary party, an event that would change everything. One evening, Layla called me from a coffee shop in Omaha, her voice low but urgent. "Lauren, you need to hear this," she said, barely pausing to sip her latte. Layla, my best friend and a freelance journalist, had a knack for sniffing out secrets. She'd overheard a colleague at a networking event mention my brother's name tied to some shady real estate deals in Atlanta. They said Evan's in over his head. She told me, her words sinking in like a stone. Something about unpaid loans and angry investors. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my laptop screen, a mix of curiosity and dread bubbling up. Layla didn't push, but she saw the look in my eyes. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "Whatever you find, you've got this." Her words were a lifeline, steadying me for what I was about to uncover. I dove into research mode, my data analyst brain kicking into high gear. Public records were my first stop. A few clicks revealed Evan's name on a string of failed real estate projects, condos that never got built, commercial lots left abandoned. Court filings showed he owed creditors over $70,000, with liens piling up against his properties. I cross-checked with business registries. His empire was a house of cards propped up by risky loans and empty promises. My stomach churned as I pieced it together. Evan wasn't the golden boy my parents painted him as he was drowning in debt. What hit harder was learning my parents were covering for him. During a tense phone call, my mom let slip that they'd sent Evan money to tide him over. "He's just hitting a rough patch," she insisted, her voice defensive. "Your brother's got big plans." I pressed her, asking how much they'd given him. She dodged, saying, "It's family business, Lauren." But I wasn't letting it go. I dug deeper, pulling bank statements from a shared account my parents still used. They'd wired Evan thousands, money they didn't have to spare. My dad's retirement fund was shrinking, and my mom had taken a part-time job to cover bills. They were bleeding cash to prop up Evan's facade while their own finances teetered on the edge. I confronted my dad over the phone, keeping my tone even. "Why are you bailing him out?" I asked. He snapped back, "Your brother's building something real. You wouldn't understand." His dismissal stung, but it wasn't new. What was new was the evidence piling up. I found emails between Evan and a lender begging for extensions on payments he couldn't make. Another search turned up a forum where contractors complained about his unpaid invoices. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. Evan's success was a mirage built on lies and borrowed time. Layla's call had lit the spark, but my own instincts kept me digging. I started noticing patterns in Evan's behavior, how he'd dodge my questions about his business, how his social media flaunted vacations and watches he couldn't possibly afford. I remembered a family call where he bragged about a new deal, but his voice cracked when my mom asked about the details. My parents didn't notice, too busy praising his ambition. I did. That crack was the first thread I pulled, unraveling the myth they'd built around him. The deeper I went, the angrier I got, not just at Evan, but at my parents for enabling him. They'd lecture me about responsibility while funneling money to a sinking ship. I thought about calling Evan out, but I held back. Confronting him now would tip him off, and I wanted hard proof before I made a move. So I kept quiet, saving screenshots, documents, anything that could expose the truth. My parents' 30th anniversary party was looming, and something told me it would be the perfect stage to set things right. A month before my parents' 30th anniversary party, I got an email from my mom with a flashy digital invitation. They were throwing a grand celebration in Macon, Georgia, at a swanky banquet hall, complete with catered food, a live band, and a guest list packed with relatives and old friends. "We're pulling out all the stops," she wrote, her words dripping with pride. I stared at the screen, a knot forming in my stomach. My parents weren't the type to splurge like this, not with their retirement account dwindling and my mom's new part-time gig at a local bank. Something didn't add up. I booked a flight from Omaha to Macon, determined to figure out what was going on. When I arrived at my childhood home, the air felt thick with tension. My dad was on the phone arguing with someone about a payment plan, his face red. My mom was sorting through catering menus, muttering about costs, but brushing off my questions. "It's a special occasion," she said, avoiding my eyes. I noticed a stack of bills on the kitchen counter, past due notices from a credit union. Later, I overheard my dad whisper to my mom, "We'll cover Evan's share too." My heart sank. They'd taken out a loan, not just for the party, but to bail out my brother again. I checked their bank statements on the family account. $5,000 wired to Evan last month, plus a $10,000 loan for the venue. Their savings were nearly gone. I confronted my mom in the living room, keeping my voice calm. "Why are you borrowing money for this?" I asked. She waved me off. "Your brother's helping with his connections. He's doing fine." But I knew better. Evan's connections were a front. His debts were mounting, and my parents were sinking with him. I didn't push further. They'd only dig in deeper. Instead, I started preparing. If they wanted to parade Evan as their pride and joy, I'd show them the truth. I spent nights in my old bedroom compiling a file, bank statements proving my six-figure income, tax returns showing no debt, and copies of Evan's liens and creditor complaints. I organized it all into a sleek presentation, every number a bullet in my arsenal. The day before I left for Macon, I met Layla for coffee in Omaha. She was in town for a freelance assignment covering a tech conference. We chatted about her latest article, a piece on startup failures. "Lots of big talkers crash and burn," she said, sipping her espresso. I nodded, thinking of Evan, but keeping it to myself. Layla didn't pry. She knew I was dealing with family drama, but stayed out of it, sticking to shop talk about deadlines and editors. Her neutrality was a relief. I didn't need a cheerleader, just a moment to breathe before the storm. Back in Macon, I helped my parents with last-minute party prep, biting my tongue as they bragged about Evan's latest deal to anyone who'd listen. At a family barbecue, my dad clapped Evan on the back, telling cousins, "My son's got a knack for business." Evan grinned, but his eyes darted to me like he knew I was watching. I smiled back, my folder of evidence tucked safely in my suitcase. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused. My parents had spent years dismissing me, propping up Evan's lies. This party wasn't just a celebration. It was their stage to show off a fantasy. I'd let them have their moment until it was time for mine. I rehearsed my plan in my head, picturing the banquet hall, the clinking glasses, the crowd. I'd wait for the perfect moment when their praise for Evan peaked to lay out the facts. My income, my stability, versus his $70,000 debt and crumbling ventures. I didn't want to humiliate them, but I needed them to see the truth, not just about Evan, but about me. The party was days away, and I was ready to turn their narrative upside down. The night of my parents' anniversary party unfolded at a fancy restaurant in Macon, chandeliers casting a warm glow over linen-covered tables. Guests in suits and dresses mingled, their laughter mixing with the clink of champagne glasses. I stood near the bar, my folder of documents tucked in my purse, my heart pounding like a drum. My dad took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. 30 years of marriage, he said, raising a glass, and we're proudest of our son Evan, a real go-getter who's made it big. The crowd cheered, and my mom joined in, her smile wide. Unlike Lauren, she added, her tone sharp, who's still scraping by, probably begging for cash. Laughter rippled through the room, relatives and friends glancing at me with pity or amusement. I gripped my purse, my nails digging into the leather. Evan stood tall beside my parents, basking in their praise, his suit pristine, but his eyes uneasy. I caught his glance, a flicker of worry crossing his face. My dad continued, "Evan's built a life of success and responsibility, something we all admire." The applause grew louder, but I'd had enough. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. "Can I say something?" The room hushed, all eyes on me. I pulled out my folder, my hands steady despite the adrenaline. "You've got it wrong," I said, looking at my parents. "I'm not begging for anything. I earned 6 figures as a data analyst in Omaha with zero debt." I held up my bank statements, the numbers clear. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Then I turned to Evan. "But my brother, he's not what you think." I laid out the evidence, court filings, liens, creditor complaints. Evan owes over $70,000 from failed real estate deals. His projects collapsed, leaving investors high and dry. The room went silent, the air heavy. My dad's face paled, his glass trembling. My mom's smile vanished, her eyes darting to Evan. He opened his mouth to protest, but I wasn't done. "I've got the receipts," I said, showing emails where he begged lenders for extensions. The crowd leaned in, some gasping, others whispering. Rebecca, Evan's wife, stepped forward, her face tight with anger. "It's true," she said, her voice shaking. "Evan hid the debt from me for years. We're separated because of it. He lied to everyone." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Guests stared at Evan, their cheers replaced by stunned silence. A cousin dropped her fork, the clatter echoing. My dad tried to speak. "Lauren, this isn't the time," but I cut him off. "It's exactly the time. You've spent years calling me a failure while propping up his lies." I pointed at Evan, who stood frozen, his charm crumbling. My mom clutched her necklace, her eyes wide with shame. The room felt like a courtroom, every guest a juror. An uncle shook his head, muttering to his wife. A family friend turned away, embarrassed for my parents. Evan's face burned red, his fists clenched, but he had no defense. The documents were undeniable, public records, bank transfers, his own words in black and white. I didn't raise my voice or gloat. I let the truth do the talking. My parents, who'd built their pride on Evan's so-called success, now faced a room full of people who saw through the facade. The celebration they'd planned to showcase their perfect family had become their undoing. I put my folder away, my point made. I didn't need their approval anymore, but I needed them to know who I was and who Evan wasn't. The silence stretched heavy with the weight of their misjudgment. I walked back to my seat, the crowd parting their whispers, following me. My parents stood on stage, exposed, their legacy tarnished. Evan slunk away, avoiding everyone's eyes. The party continued, but the mood had shifted. No one could unhear what I'd said. After that fateful party, my family was never the same. The truth I'd laid bare in that Macon restaurant shattered the illusion my parents had clung to for years. A week later, my mom called, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "Lauren, we need your help," she said, admitting their savings were gone, drained by loans for Evan and the lavish celebration. "Can you send us some money?" I sat in my Omaha apartment, staring out at the city skyline, my resolve hardening. "No," I said firmly. "You made your choices." I hung up, and that was the last time we spoke. I blocked their numbers, my inbox, their social media. The family I'd once hoped to please was now a closed chapter. Evan's downfall came swiftly. With his debts exposed, creditors closed in like vultures. Court documents I later found showed his real estate ventures were officially bankrupt. His assets seized to cover over $70,000 in unpaid loans. His Atlanta condo, once a symbol of his success, was foreclosed, leaving him scrambling for a cheap rental. Rebecca filed for divorce, unwilling to stay with someone who'd buried her in lies. "I trusted him," she told me in a brief call, her voice heavy with regret. "He ruined us." I listened, offering no comfort. Her pain was real, but so was mine. Evan's charmed life, built on borrowed money, and my parents' blind faith, had collapsed into rubble. My parents faced their own reckoning. The social circle they'd cherished in Macon turned cold. Relatives who'd clapped for Evan's boasts at the party now whispered about his failures. A family friend, once a regular at their barbecues, stopped inviting them to gatherings. My dad's golf buddies started dodging his calls, embarrassed by the spectacle of that night. My mom, who'd prided herself on her spotless reputation, found her book club meetings awkward, with members avoiding her gaze. Their status as the perfect middle-class couple, so carefully curated, was now a punchline. They tried reaching out to me through mutual contacts, but I held firm. No apologies could undo years of dismissal. I focused on my life in Omaha, where my career as a data analyst continued to thrive. I led a major project for a retail chain, boosting their sales by 20% with my predictive models. My team threw a small celebration, and I invited Layla, who was in town for a tech summit. We sat in a sleek conference center sipping overpriced coffee discussing her latest article on data privacy. "You're killing it," she said, grinning, her notebook stuffed with notes from the event. I smiled back, grateful for her friendship but glad she didn't pry into my family mess. Our talk stayed light, centered on work and industry trends, a welcome break from the chaos I'd left behind. Evan tried contacting me once, a rambling voicemail begging for a loan to get back on his feet. His voice cracked, stripped of its usual swagger. I deleted it without responding. He'd made his bed. Luxury cars, fake deals, lies to everyone, and I wasn't going to prop him up. Public records showed he'd moved to a small apartment, working odd jobs to scrape by. Rebecca, now free of him, had relocated to Savannah, starting fresh with a teaching job. I didn't reach out. Our paths had diverged, and I had no interest in looking back. My parents' situation grew bleaker. A cousin let slip that they'd downsized to a smaller house, unable to keep up with their old mortgage. My mom's part-time job at the bank became full-time, her evenings spent balancing books instead of hosting dinners. My dad, once the proud patriarch, withdrew, his confidence shaken. They'd bet everything on Evan, ignoring me, and now they were paying the price financially and socially. I felt no satisfaction, only a dull ache for the family we could have been. But I'd made my choice to protect my peace, to live for myself. A year after that fateful party, I stood stronger than ever in Omaha, my life, a testament to choices made on my own terms. My career as a data analyst soared. I'd just secured a contract with a national tech firm, my strategies driving their growth. My apartment with its view of the Missouri River was a space I'd built without anyone's approval. I surrounded myself with people who valued me, colleagues, who respected my work, friends, who celebrated my wins. I'd let go of the need to prove myself to my family, a weight that had once anchored me to their expectations. My parents, Douglas and Elaine, and my brother Evan, were no longer part of my world. I'd chosen peace over their chaos. Looking back, I learned a hard truth: my worth didn't depend on their validation. For years, I'd craved their acknowledgement, chasing a nod from my dad or a kind word from my mom. But their refusal to see me dismissing my career, my stability, taught me to define my own value. I built a life of honesty and hard work, while Evan's lies led him to ruin. His fake empire, propped up by deceit, cost him his home, his marriage, and his pride. My parents' blind faith in him stripped them of their savings and their social standing. Living a lie, I realized, comes with a price, one they all paid dearly. This journey wasn't just about exposing Evan's failures, it was about reclaiming my truth. I stopped seeking approval from those who couldn't give it and started living for myself. That choice freed me. I wake up each day knowing my success is mine, earned through late nights, tough calls, and unwavering focus. The scars from my family's rejection are still there, but they don't define me. They're reminders of what I overcame, proof that I don't need anyone's permission to shine. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. If you've ever felt misunderstood by your family, judged for being yourself, I see you. Your value isn't tied to their opinions. It's in the life you build, the truth you live. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you faced a moment where your family didn't get you? Share it in the comments. Let's talk about it. We're stronger when we lift each other up. I'm Lauren, and I'm free. Not because I won their approval, but because I stopped needing it. Living authentically without masks or pretense is my victory. It's a freedom I wish for everyone, a life where you're enough just as you are.